April is Alumni Month in the Laurier College Success Center. I'm Janine Perez. I'm the director of the Student Success Center for the College of Education. We're excited to have some of our alumni from the Child and Adolescent Development Department with us today to share their stories on their experiences in the CHAD department and beyond, what the next steps are. And hopefully this will help our current students get some insight into some opportunities and possibilities for them as they move into either graduate school or the workforce or both. So I just wanted to introduce our panelists today. We have Andrea. Andrea graduated from CHAD in 2015, and after graduation, worked at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. She was interested in making policy changes for public schools, and some experiences at the county office really led her to go back to school to pursue graduate work, and realizing that the most impactful change that she could make happens directly with working with students. So she pursued a master's in counseling psychology with dual focuses in school counseling and professional clinical counseling, and is currently working as a high school counselor. And long-term goals for Andrea are working towards receiving a license to open her own clinical counseling practice for youth. So thank you, Andrea, for joining us today. We also have Annabelle. Annabelle is also a CHAD grad. She completed the program in spring of 2019. She started her career at the South Valley YMCA in their after-school programs. And then in 2021, joined the Kiddie Academy of Cupertino and has moved up to the preschool assistant director position, serving children from infancy to pre-K. So thanks for joining us today, Annabelle. And then we also have Juan. Juan is a two-time alumni from San Jose State. He completed his bachelor's in CHAD in 2015 and then continued on to the master's program. So if you have questions about that master's program that we have, Juan's a great resource. He completed the program in 2017, and his teaching journey began as an adjunct professor at Hartnell College, and he is now a full-time professor at Diablo Valley College in the Early Childhood Education Department. So thank you, Juan, for joining us. All right. Well, first question that I have for our panelists is, what drove you to the field that you are working in now? As you know, CHAD is a really broad-based program, so it prepares you for really a wide range of employment opportunities. So what drove you to your particular spaces in education now?
I guess I'll go first. Yeah, I think you kind of touched base off of kind of where I started. I was at the County Office of Education for Santa Clara County. I worked in more so admin, so more so supporting those that are out there on the field. And I was really interested in systemic change, so policies, and how can we support students in public education. During my year there, I realized that, the work that I was doing wasn't really making a difference, at least not in my eyes. It wasn't really making a difference. And I thought that the most change that I could get would be with students, to actually be with students on campuses. Although during my time in, at the CHAD program, we volunteered. I can't remember which class it was. We volunteered at like childcare or something. That's when I realized I couldn't be a teacher. I just don't have classroom management skills. It was just not in my strength. And so I knew the only way that I could work with students and really support them, and that kind of led me to counseling. So I went back to school, got my master's at University of San Francisco, and like ever since I went back to school, that's kind of what led me here. And every day it's just so rewarding, and I feel validated that this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm meant to be.
Thanks, Andrea.
I can go next.
Thank you.
I started in the field before knowing that I wanted to go in this area. I worked as an assistant and gradually started getting units. And I loved it. I worked with infants, with toddlers, with preschoolers. So I early on knew that working with children under 5 was what I wanted to do. Um, and after getting my bachelor's, I just felt like there was just so much more that I could continue learning in this field. And I wanted to have more of an impact in my community and the children's and families in our community. So I decided to continue and go for my master's just because of that eagerness to keep helping and helping more and having more of like a bigger scope of helping. And that's when I wanted to sort of train those individuals who will be working directly with children. So that's what led me towards thinking about becoming an instructor. And luckily for me, the program San Jose was just perfect for that. It really prepared me to come back in the workforce and really feel like I had the skills to share what I've had learned in my own journey, working through all those years and different ages, but also now with the skills that I got in my graduate program to come out and train others, as that's what it mostly is in community college.
And then as for me, what directed me to the assistant director at a preschool today, I could share that after I graduated 2019 from San Jose State, I was looking for jobs and I wasn't sure where to start off. So after I graduated, I was in a summer camp and I got the opportunity to become a teacher. And beforehand, I was getting my experience working with children starting from kindergarten to 5th grade. I was more of a team leader. I started off and I was mirroring and just watching how like teachers micromanage, how they got the class together, how they put together the curriculum, little things like that, of course. And then after I graduated, when I did graduate, I got the opportunity to become a teacher. And then I used those skills, those tips that I saw and mirrored, and then I tried it out for the 1st, 2nd grade. It seemed challenging. It was and it grew and motivated me to become more in a classroom setting. So I found the YMCA at South Valley, and I was given the opportunity to do an after-school program, and it was from starting for low-income children, and it started from like a mix of kindergarten to 5th grade. And from there, I was there. I just started, and COVID happened. Of course, we all know that. But from there, like we were limited to things, and then like parents, teachers, and even kids, they have questions about like, why can't we go to school regularly? Or parents are like, why can't we have parent nights like we used to beforehand? So and like enrollment, everything. So then I got more interested into the back ends of learning how enrollment goes, how a school runs. And then it reflected me back to actually one of Janine's classes for CHAD 157, 158. I recall the executive director. So like it helped me enhance and remember what I did learn from that class. And then I had an opportunity with Kiddie Academy as an admin. And from there, I learned the enrollment process, what are the goals from the director herself and what she wants me to do to increase more children and parents to know that we're a safe school and we're still learning through this outbreak. And then from there, we saw transition, and I enjoy working with children so much. I could step into any classrooms, and I could share that I now have experience working from infants up to middle schoolers. And not only kids myself, I love working with a team, and there's teachers who are learning to become like a well-certified teacher as well. So they always ask me questions of like what I've seen or what I've heard, or like ask for tips and stuff like that. So it helps me like give those tips to those teachers to grow inside the classroom that they are now. And they still ask me continuously, and I have no problem with that. And that's where it led me to my position as assistant director. And it's quite amazing seeing like how much growth that I see myself, not just for me, but like as the children and then the kids, and then like seeing how the school went from back then to now. And that's where I would share I am today.
Thanks, Annabelle. Thank you. So Bertati and Guadalupe, I just want to let you know, I have some questions that we like over the years students have asked, but this is really a time for you to also ask questions. So if there's something on the top of your mind that you would like to ask the panelists, either all three of them or one in particular, please feel free to unmute and ask or put that in the chat. Either one is fine.
I have a question for Juan.
Yeah.
I wanted to know that how did you apply to Diablo Valley College? Like, how did someone introduce you, or did you like blindly apply to the college? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good question. I was actually seeking for a full-time position as a lecturer. At that time, I was working as a social worker, and I knew that I didn't want to do social work, even though I learned a lot on family services. And one of the things that it's very important when you want to become a professor is that most of the times you're going to need to start as a part-timer to get that exposure in the field, to build up sort of like your curriculum in that way. But I was just looking for open positions, and I applied to that college because they had an open position. It's very interesting how it works out that every college kind of wants someone that comes from a different mindset, that brings something new. So I couldn't get the position that was offered at the college I was already working at, but I got the position that it was, in a different place based on where I was working. So I think that a lot of the times, the last thing I want to add is that many times people think that you need like a special certificate or a special license to teach in community college. And most of the time, that's not the case. Sometimes it is, but many times your experience in the field can support that requirement if there is. So hopefully that answers your question.
So the experience in the field, as in like you had experience working as an assistant professor in another college. So that helped you while applying for this college, for this position, right?
Yeah, so a lot of it was my experience working as a preschool teacher and as a toddler teacher, having those years that, specifically when you're working at a community college, that you're going to be training the workforce that is directly working with children at that moment, then that looked really good in my specific field, that I was part of that workforce. And I was able to understand and be able to know what they needed to learn in the classroom to be ready in their own centers.
Okay, great. And one more question. So what I was wondering, so though they don't need a PhD or a higher degree for teaching in community college, or is master's enough for teaching in a community college?
It definitely depends on each community college and requirements, but most of the times your master's degree is it's the minimum requirement. I know that if you can justify the amount of work that you've done in the field, sometimes if you have enough years working on the field, a bachelor's and your years working on the field can meet the minimum requirements. But like I said, it all depends on each community college, in each position. There's different requirements, but at least for me, for the one that I applied, it was only my master that was the requirement for that position.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great questions. Some good insight, Juan. That's something that comes up a lot from our new graduates or our recent alumni is, how do I get into teaching at the community college level? And it can be a little tricky because the positions are so few and far between sometimes, and it's really getting your resume into those application pools and taking, you know, when they call and say, hey, can you teach this one class? Say yes, and getting your foot in the door that way. And sometimes it means you're a freeway flyer. So freeway flyers are folks that teach at different community colleges, you know, around the Bay. At one point in my career, I was teaching at Gavilan, at San Jose City, and at San Jose State. And sometimes that's kind of the life of you know, a pre-tenured lecturer, of just trying to get your foot in the door somewhere. So great insight. Thank you, Juan. Guadalupe, did you have any questions you wanted to ask, or any others for Tati? I have a list here if you want to think about that a little bit more.
No, I'm trying to think of one that's not coming in yet.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Just interrupt me whenever something comes to mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I think what's a lot of students struggle with is, how is what I'm learning from CAD going to be applicable into other areas? And so, Andrea, I would love to hear of your perspective on how the foundation and what you learned in Laureate College have helped not only prepare you for graduate school, but also this career in counseling.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I looked over this question too, and I said, "Wow, I had to, I had to think back a little bit." 2015 was a little bit ago, but I think the biggest thing for me was the relationships that you're making throughout the program. I've taken that with me everywhere I've gone. Even the instructors at the San Jose State program, I think having that relationship with your advisor, or just a teacher that you've connected with, instructor that you've connected with, I think that takes you far, because you're learning from their experience. They're well immersed in their field, that if you have questions, you know, they know the answer. They kind of can help navigate some of the things. And I think that's, like I said, that's the biggest thing that I've learned is the networking piece, the building relationships, because it's not a very clear field, to be quite honest. Like, when I first got into the program for child development, the first thing you think of is teaching. But what I loved about San Jose State is that they had that other option, where you want to work with children, but maybe you don't necessarily want to be a teacher. And I think that for me was so big, because my whole life I wanted to work with children, and I learned really easily that, like I said, teaching was not in my strength. So yeah, having those connections, and it carried on. When I was in graduate school, my goal there was building relationships with my instructors and my advisors, and they're still my mentors still today. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from this program.
Awesome, thank you. So another question that I think a lot of our students have is, what kind of advice would you give to students who are graduating soon as they start applying for jobs? I think this is, the three of you are really well versed to answer this, because none of you are in the position that you started in when you finished San Jose State. And I feel like some of our students feel like they need to find that job, that dream job right away, the first and only. So could you speak a little bit to kind of like the process of that first job, what you should be looking for, and what that was like for you? And I think maybe the three of you could answer this. We're going to go Annabelle, Juan, and then Andrea.
So thinking back, the question was what I learned back from graduating, is that correct?
So what advice would you give students as they're starting to apply for jobs?
Yes.
Because a lot of our students are like looking for the unicorn, right? Like their perfect job.
Yeah. What I did learn was things do take time, and honestly, just a lot of patience, because even if you find so many opportunities, I thought, I was like, okay, let me just apply for this, and then let's see the outcome of it, and let me see how it goes. I was quite patient. I was just like, I'm not rushing for anything. I had myself occupied to do something while working at a summer camp program. And then from there, things do come as they go, and interviews happen, and then quiet questions are like, specific ones were like, probably, how are you with deadlines? When I think deadlines, I think back when I was back in child development, when we had those deadlines of papers, those 13, 14 pages too. And then I thought, okay, it depends what type of the deadline is, what is it, and what is the outcome of it, and like, how can you show it to get it done, and how they can entrust that you could be that career for that position that you do want. And it was the most frequent question. And then I gave so many ideas I learned along the way, or what I do have planned for what they want from me from the company, and that's what they do share. So it has prepared me to learn what deadlines are, patience, and just knowing that, just looking for any open opportunity, I would say.
I think the biggest advice will be that definitely whatever you start is not going to be where you end, and that every single job that if you are here and you want to do either education or work with children or in family services, every single job that you get related to any of those three is going to support you for your next step. When I graduated with my bachelor's, I started working as in ABA therapy, not really thinking that was gonna support me for my next step, but it was a job that it was flexible, so that's what I needed at that point. But then when I got to apply for the position of social worker with children with special needs, that was exactly what helped me get that position. And so it's you might feel like, well, I really want to end up at that position. Like in my mind, I had the idea that I wanted to become a professor in community college, but I needed to take a little more steps to get to that bigger step. And the small jobs that I thought they were small back then, it was big, really big jobs that helped me get to here now. So I think that maybe not feeling like if you don't get your dream job at the first time you apply, then it's all over, because many times you just have to take those smaller steps to reach that bigger goal. And I think that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Similar to what Juan said, I would say, right after you graduate and get a job, don't think of it as your forever job. Every job that you come across, there's a learning experience, there's always growth. You're taking, and this is what I tell my high schoolers, is that in every experience, I think you're shaping what you eventually are going to end up into. So, if you're in a specific job and you're like, oh, I like this about it, I don't like that about it, at least for your next job, what you're looking for. And that's going to continuously carry you on until you find that job that you're like, no, I love everything about this. I mean, at least for most of everything, but you're not going to find your forever job. And I know there's a lot of pressure behind it, right? Because you're in this program, you're graduating all together. You might be hearing from your peers too that they're landing jobs before you, and you're like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Like, how come I can't find it? But really just focus on your own path, and just trust the process that you'll find that job eventually.
That's such great advice. And I think each of you touched on pieces that are really critical of it. But every position that you have, you're taking little pieces of that, and it's shaping who you are as a professional and as an expert in the field, right? And although it might be kind of ancillary to the work you're doing now, it still helps to shape what you're doing today and who you are. And then it also helps to bring some different perspectives into the work that you're doing now. So, Annabelle, starting out with like the administrative piece, you could really do any of the positions that you're supervising. And I think that's critical in having a really strong leader, is someone that knows the ins and outs of an organization and can step in and jump in and teach, or, do enrollment or do whatever, because you've had those experiences. And Juan, I'm sure your experiences in the field doing that direct service really lends itself to your lectures and being able to apply the theory to the practice for your students. And then Andrea, being at the county office and seeing all of those components that come into play when it's like this larger picture that not very many people get the opportunity to have that perspective. And then knowing the role that you play in that direct service probably helps to really frame the way that you approach the work and kind of the interdisciplinary team stuff that you're doing too at the high school level. So each of you have like got such critical insights there. I think it's super important.
Sorry, Janae, if I could also add something
Yeah.
as well. Something that I realized too, being a child development major, it's not a clear cut path into an exact field, right? There's no, I'm going to be a child development person, right? Unlike, the other programs that are on campus, like nursing, that's obviously a clear cut field. Electrical engineering, well, if you're going to be, electrical engineer. So child development is such a broad field, and there's so many opportunities within it. You can get really creative when you graduate with this. So if there's anything that's catching your eye that has to do with child development, go for it, because you can really spin what's so great about our degree is that you can spin it to whatever fits your strengths best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to pause to see if our students have any questions while I pull another one. So this one actually isn't on the list, but is one that I get asked all the time when I was teaching and as an advisor. Should you go to graduate school right away? Should you work first? What's best? What should you do? So you all have different experiences with this. I would love to hear your insight on that question. I think students are always worried that if they don't go right away, they're never going to go back. And I have a canned response to that. So I'd love to hear what you all think.
Yeah, I go ahead first.
No, it's okay.
I think that for me, I think it's a lot about knowing yourself. And I think for me, at least, I had that worry. I was really scared that if I didn't apply right away, then I was gonna be the person that just got too comfortable in doing the job and not gonna come back. So I applied right away for that reason. Now looking back, I don't think that I had to go straight through. It worked for me and for the plan I had, but mostly it was because I also knew what I wanted to get out of my grad school program back then. And I'll let all the other ones talk about what happens when you don't go right away, but I don't think it wasn't wrong for me to do it. Because that just worked for my plan specifically.
As for me, to this day, I still think about it. It's still been on my mind. I'm still in the process of looking into it. Of course I do. After I graduated, it was to come up with the questions that I graduated with a few of my friends actually in the same field, and they were stressing about a bit. They're saying, oh, I need to get this done in order to be in grad school and so on. And like listening to it, I was just like, oh, that sounds really amazing and like a great opportunity. And for me, like personally, I chose to weigh it off and like enjoy and search around and just see what the opportunity of what my CHAT degree can give me, and then like how I could give it back to the community. So I'm still doing it to this day, and I was happy to found Kiddie Academy. And it has shared like a lot of growth and opportunity for myself. And like, it still comes to my mind, like what I want to do for my master's or graduate school and stuff like that. But like I shared, like it does take time. It's no rush. It will come back to your mind. And then like along the way, when you take that little break from it, I'm not saying go for a break, but you will see things along the way. Like, oh, maybe if I went to school for this, like what Andrea shared, I could make a policy out of this, and I could definitely go ahead and show that my policy could definitely work for the school system, for and so on like that. And like, I think that's quite amazing too, but there's so many opportunities and how like you can find along the way than going straight to graduate school and thinking like what you could think of there, if that makes any sense.
So for me, I waited a year before I went into grad school. I didn't know at the time though that I wanted to go back to school. So to be transparent, it did take me 6 years to get my undergrad. Changed my major quite a bit. I honestly, looking back, I don't think I would have changed it anyway. I don't think I would have gone back sooner. I don't think I would have waited longer. I think it was the perfect time for me. And I think that's really important, is to be very self-aware. Like, are you in the mindset to do school all over again? Because grad school, I would say, no offense, it was my favorite experience, because you're in a room full of people after the same goals, similar values, and it's just so interesting and so powerful to be in a room constantly with students in a cohort just like that. And I think a big part of it too is maturity level. Like, I don't know if right after I graduate undergrad, I would be mature enough personally to continue on to grad school, because it's such independent work, and you really have to want to do it. And then also, does it fit into where your life is at that time? Because the program I was in was a working program, so I was at USF Thursday evenings, Friday evenings, and Saturday all day. And so it worked for like my job, but I did take a lot of time off because of like field work. And there's just so much that goes into a grad program that I think kind of evaluate where you are in your life, and does that program make sense? Attend information sessions. Like, if there's a program that you're really interested in, go to the information session, see if what their schedule looks like, and see if it fits into your life where you are at the time.
Again, such good advice from the three of you, and all really different experiences. And I think that that's really important for our current students to hear, that there isn't a right answer. I know they come in always asking that question, hoping for the right answer, but the right answer depends on the individual and where you're at and what your trajectory is and what your plans are. And for some students, yeah, it's, starting right away. And for others, it's, getting into the field for a minute and seeing what the options are. And for others, still, it's, seeing where your CHAD degree is going to take you. And it could take you in a totally different direction. So yeah, good. Being open to that, I think, is really important. Okay, let me see. I want to ask one more question before we wrap up with final advice. All right, we used to do this in my classes for check-in. So your peak and your pit. What's the greatest challenge about your work, and what is the greatest joy about your work?
I could go first. I think in every position that I've done in regards to working with children and families, either that was being a preschool teacher, working with family services, and now working at a community college, probably one of the greatest challenges is always working with policy that might not support what is best for the population that you're serving. I think that's probably some of the things that haven't changed since I've been in the field in the past 10 years, and probably won't change very anytime soon. But at the same time, in the opposite, one of my greatest joy is on supporting now students, but before it was supporting children or supporting families, and having that joy of making a difference into the life of someone. That's always something that I need a paycheck, but that's goes way far, whatever paycheck I get. And I think it goes side with that, because you always find loopholes in the policy to do what it's best for the population that you're working for. So I think, those are those two things for me.
Thanks, Juan. Who wants to go next?
So for me, the greatest challenge is for myself. I always have questions of whatever idea I come up with. Even if I'm in the school, outside the school, I come up with like some ideas that maybe that will help grow the school, and then like let the community know about us. I always have questions like, if I do this, what happens if the outcome of it? Or if I have to ask someone, what is your idea on this, before I take action plan into it. The greatest challenge for myself, I would just want to say, is like, I always ask myself questions. I don't say I doubt myself, but I want to know all the answers to everything that I want to do, for like, not just for the school, just for myself. And then like teachers who have follow-up questions about like teaching styles, or what they can do in the classroom, inside or out. I can't give them the answer as soon as I want. I will share that, but I do say I will figure out the answer along the way. Let's see how it goes. And like the outcome out of all the questions I always ask or hear from, it's quite amazing. You never know what it is and stuff like that. And then also I learned along the way, like I shared, is like, keep the ideas going. Like you never know where it'll come up. Like it could be while you're stuck in traffic, while you're heading to work or back work or so on like that. I always jot down notes wherever I go. That way my questions or answers are always followed up for my whatever I want to do.
I would say the biggest challenge in my job is adapting, and then also just the multiple roles of it all. Going into school counseling, I guess we've used to be guidance counselors, so it's very academic focused, your connection into college, but it's evolved so much over the years, and that a big part of it is mental health. And so that's, there's so many different tiers to this job, and we wear so many different hats that I think for me, every day is different. 1 minute I'm giving, graduation status support, reviewing and analyzing transcripts. The next minute I have a student crying over such and such. So it's like every moment is different, but I think that's what I love about the job. It's not just, routine, that I get a little bit of everything every day. It keeps my days interesting. And then I think the most rewarding thing, the job in itself, it's just so rewarding. Supporting students, not only just students, but families, seeing your students grow from 9th grade to 12th grade. And, I have a lot of needy 9th graders and 10th graders, and then I don't see them ever again until they graduate, because they've had that growth. And I think that for me is just supporting students, supporting parents, and their families. I had a parent tell me last week that I saved their lives, and you just reach so many layers with students and their families. So I would say that's the most rewarding thing about the job.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing. All right. So Bertati, Guadalupe, any questions that come to mind before we have our panelists share their final thoughts?
Well, the one I had that the answer already was the one about like going to graduate school right away, or like if taking a break was okay. But yeah, it was helpful hearing the advice and info on how it basically depends how you're doing in life, what you're doing next, does it fit and all.
Good. I'm glad that was helpful. All right. Well, I wanted to give our panelists an opportunity just to share final words of advice for our current undergrads, if you have any. Any final words of advice?
I think that if something really brings you to this field, you are gonna find your path. You are gonna find your perfect job, even if you don't have it right now. If you are not sure, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, but there was something that really brought you to this specific program and to this specific workforce, then you are in the correct place. And it's just finding that one place where you just really will feel fulfill, beyond anything else. I think that, like Andrea mentioned a while ago, you got to trust the process. Sometimes the process takes a little longer, but that doesn't really define any type of success. And just always keep your mind on what you are doing at that moment and how that's going to help you for moving forward for the next step that you want to take.
That's great, Juan. Thank you. Anybody else?
I would say if you really have this passion for working with children, hold on to that. It's honestly being out there. I'm sure the other panelists can agree that our children are constantly changing and their needs are constantly changing. And we need more people out there. No matter what you're doing with child development, we need more people out there. I mean, I'm seeing it in counseling. When I went into counseling, I thought I was going to support the students that were just like me when I was in high school. But social media and, the addiction to cell phones, just everything going on in the world has really impacted our kids. And so like I said, if you have that passion for children, hold on to that no matter where you are and where you're going to take it, because we do need more people out there.
Absolutely. And, especially this next generation that's coming through, who have only known school in COVID, have only known creating friendships in this pandemic. They are going to need really supportive adults and folks that have an understanding of development and how all of those domains interrelate with one another and how they can be supported, and having that nice, the strengthening of assets. And so it is really important that we have more folks like you in the field committed to this work. All right. Well, I want to thank our panelists for joining us this afternoon. These sessions are always my favorite, not just because I get to see former students, but it's super inspiring for me to hear about the work that you're doing in the field. It is such a joy to be able to see kind of big picture, just like you, Andrea, how you see the changes in your students, to be able to see that come full circle. And now, Juan, you're training community college students that may then transfer to San Jose State, and how full circle is that? And the same with Andrea and Annabelle, you're starting with them at a younger age, and it's really exciting to have you all participate in this way and share your insights and your expertise with our current students. So thank you. I know you are all very busy with the work that you're doing, and we appreciate your time.